The views and opinions expressed by guests on this show are those of our guests, not necessarily ours. We are interested in presenting different viewpoints and strive to be neutral parties. We leave it up to you to make your own judgments. Welcome to Vision Chat, a podcast about spiritual topics, with your hosts, Virginia and Stine. Hello and welcome to another episode of Vision Chat. Today we are interviewing Ruth Brennan. Ruth is a weaver of wisdom, creativity, and transformation, a devoted guide and teacher of human design who brings depth, compassion, and artistry to everything she touches. Certified as a human design analyst and teacher of Rave ABCs, Rave cartography, and advanced professional training levels 3 and 4. Ruth blends technical mastery with a soulful approach. She is also a certified BG5 business consultant, helping clients navigate their professional lives with alignment and purpose. As the creative and marketing director for the International Human Design School, Ruth collaborates with visionaries like Linda Bunnell and Lynette Crisfield. Her work breathes life into the school's mission, combining stunning visual designs and eloquently written content for IHDS, the BG5 Institute, and Solar Transit Reports. She co-authored A New Kind of Awakening, a newcomer's guide to the human design system, alongside Linda Bunnell. Beyond her work in human design, Ruth has spent her life immersed in ancient wisdom and the arts. A singer-songwriter, she recorded 2 children's albums and wrote 5 murder mystery plays, all produced in New York during the 1980s and 90s. Her creative spirit flows into her work, adding layers of richness and depth to her offerings. Today, Ruth resides in the lush Pacific Northwest, where she draws inspiration from the beauty around her. She shares her home with her beloved puppy, Alvin, and continues to teach, guide, and create, embodying the profound alignment and authenticity she helps others discover in their own lives. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
I like to say that I was a nomad for most of my life. Growing up, I never spent an entire school year in any single school. And I kind of kept that path as I got into my early 20s. I moved around a lot. Living in many, many states, and for a year in Germany. When I came back to the States, it was such a profound experience for me to immerse myself in a different culture, a different way of being. And I became fascinated with culture and religion. I grew up Catholic. And I'm sure I'm not remembering this verbatim, but I remember being in a catechism class and saying, oh man, this can't be right, right? So I started questioning common belief, the conditioned and homogenized way that we look at the world. And I started studying different religions. I became curious in the 70s when Ernest Werhart first came out with his S training and Rolfing and Hatha yoga and transcendental meditation. I guess you could say I was searching for something, always searching for something out there, which is a great segue for me into human design. Because as I got older in my life, I was ending a 20-year marriage that had turned toxic. Got diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And it really hit me that I had no clue who I was anymore. And so I deeply started diving into religions and beliefs again, still searching out there for what the heck was not right in here. That's when I came across human design. And of all the things I'd looked at and investigated and studied, there was something that resonated with me about finding the answers in here, right? How can I heal myself, maybe not cure myself. I mean, I've been living with cancer for 13 years, and what a rocky road it's been, but I really do contribute much of my peace and life to the wisdom that human design brought me about me. Right. So after all this searching out there, I finally started looking in here, and I found my own answers, or better said, I'm finding my own answers. Yeah. So that was about 2011, 2012. And I started studying human design on my own, thinking I could figure it all out. I got to a certain point that I just needed a human to connect the dots for me, because it's not complicated, but it's complex. And I needed someone. And that's when I found my first mentor teacher, you could say. And then I started on my journey through the educational path with the International Human Design School. And I'm still on it, still learning, still studying, still what we call experimenting with the knowledge to see what's right and true for me.
For somebody that have never heard about human design before, do you want to explain?
It is a self-awareness system and a set of tools that you can use no matter what your belief is, no matter whatever other things you study or believe in. It is a set of tools to help you become aware, not only of your thinking and why it is the way it is, but how to learn to make decisions that are right for you as an individual, rather than what everybody else in the world, your culture, your religion, your family, whatever they say you should and shouldn't do, right? So a lot of people follow those conventions, right? And they end up really unhappy, not feeling fulfilled, because it wasn't right to follow, right, the leader. It was more correct to find out what's right for you and take off on that path, the road not taken, right, which is home to yourself.
Sounds like human design helped you a lot on your journey, because as you said, I can imagine it must have been so rough going through all of your experience that you went through. You called yourself also a nomad before. Do you have any other labels or anything else you call yourself?
Wow, that's a great question. By the way, the nomad life ended when I landed in the Pacific Northwest. I've been here 20 years now, and I absolutely love it. It is, such a magical, beautiful, lush place to be. And I've actually met a wonderful circle of women who have supported me through all of my changes and challenges and treatments and things like that I've needed to do over the course of, a cancer journey. I chose not to go strictly the traditional route. And so I combined the Western medicine and many, many other alternative treatments and therapies along the way, using what I call my inner authority, what was correct for me, rather than just following the normal treatment plan that a doctor might give you. So maybe a bit of a rebel, bucking against the system. My profile in human design, and a profile is like the costume you wear in life, is called a heretic investigator, right? Someone who, has their own twist on things, doesn't necessarily follow the road that's mostly taken. And the investigator part means, boy, if I find something interesting, I don't ever let it go. I study, investigate, research, embody, whatever it takes, right? because I feel more secure when I'm an authority on things. So I don't like not to have the whole picture.
So heretic investigator is a like a label, one of the labels that you use in human design?
Yes, it's a very general description of, what I put out into the world. So in human design, we have what we call the 4 views, right? And the first calculation we make to find out what your human design is similar to that of astrology, the date, the time, city, state, where you were born. And that gives us what we call our personality or conscious imprints, right? Our potential to be different, to differentiate in life, to be unique. Unlike many other systems, human design has a second calculation, and that is 88 degrees of the sun, or about 3 months before you're born. And those imprints are what we call unconscious, or, create the form, the body. We don't have conscious access to them. But of course, as they emerge over time, you can reflect and see it in yourself. You know how sometimes you see things in people that they don't see in themselves, right? Those might be correlated with the unconscious imprints that we have. And we are a quantum of both, right? We're not just who we think we are, but we're also who we are. And together it gives you, I guess you could call it a map for you to live life uniquely as yourself. We're all 99.99% the same, right? Our genetic code is so complex. We're very much the same, but there's this itty bitty little bit that makes each of us unique and different. And your human design chart shows you your potential for that differentiation. It's always easier to be and act from your nature rather than trying to be what you're not. There's a whole lot less resistance. If you can surrender to that, things can become a lot more graceful, and easy to navigate in your life. That's what I have found. That's one of the main gifts human design has given me. Like the doctor would say, well, we have to do these 2 surgeries, and then we want you to do chemotherapy. And I immediately knew, no, chemotherapy is not for me. I didn't want to do it. I knew it wasn't right. And so I said no, much to the chagrin of my family, who were scared for me, rightly so. But it ended up being the correct thing for me.
That's a really deep and very meaningful example of how it sounds like human design has helped you personally, like with such a big decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Medical issues.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find that it helps people with like does it help people with day-to-day things, or is it mainly like career choices and things like that?
Well, we like to say that, we don't live in a perfect world, right? So although some people do start, we call it experimenting with their design, trying it out and see what feels correct for them or not. It's not a one-size-fits-all system. It's very, very personal and unique, with some, I don't want to say rules, but some thoughts, right, on how you might go about navigating your life. Relationships, careers, where you live, those big decisions that really affect the course of your life, perhaps are the most important things to use human design for. Like if you were to, live in a perfect world, you would never do anything you don't want to do. So I'm what is called the generator aura type. It's the most prevalent type on the planet. And, my inner authority, my sacral speaks. It goes, that's yes, right for me, or no, not right for me. Well, we all have to do things we don't want to do, right? When I first was introduced to human design, I was working in marketing, advertising. I had been a creative director for many, many years, and I was over it, right? It was no longer exciting. It was frustrating, which for me is a signpost that, well, you're maybe not on the right path. But I couldn't just quit doing that because I was single. I have to support myself, live alone, right? So I had to do some things that I just didn't want to do. But I started using the tools to say, okay, how can I start saying yes to things that light me up, that feel really good to me? And learning, my biggest lesson is learning to say no, because I don't like to upset people and I want them to think that I'm a good friend and a good daughter and a good sister and all of those things, which is part of how my mind works. So learning to say no was and is my biggest lesson. But I couldn't just blow my life up in my situation, or I chose not to. It didn't feel right for me. Some people enter human design and do exactly that, but that's not the path that I chose.
Is there other different types when it comes to human design?
So based on a body graph, your body graph, there are 9 energetic hubs. We call them centers. And depending upon how those centers are connected, based on your imprints, your energetic field can work one of 4 general ways. We have the least common type is called a reflector, about 1.5–2% of humanity. And they are very, very open. We have manifestors, 8–10% of humanity. They have a very impactful aura. If you had to use a word, they might be like the spark plug here to get things rolling. And then we have the projector aura type, about 20% of humanity, give or take. They have come in to be the new leaders and guides and help the other types, specifically the generators like me, which are about not quite 70% of humanity, help them use their energy, guide them. During our history, the last many thousands of years, manifestors were the leaders. When we had a hierarchy, there was always like a king, a queen, a pope, an emperor, some ruler at the top saying everybody needs to do this, or, fear was the motivator. That allowed us to build the incredible infrastructure and civilization we have now. But a few hundred years ago, there was a mutation and a new type, the projector type, being merged to be a more cooperative, in cooperation kind of a leader and guide to help the other types navigate their trajectory, geometry, to make better decisions about where and how they should move through life. Yeah, so 4 aura types. There are subtypes, like there are manifesting generators, which, have a little different expression, and many, many different kinds of projectors. They're more different kinds of projectors than any other type. Anyone who's curious can go to the IHDS website, which is IHD, International Human Design, school.com, and you can get a free chart. And there's also something called a free short report that you can order. It's delivered electronically almost immediately to you, and it gives you the basic understanding of your circuit board, your aura, your energy field.
It sounds like there's some things that you're mentioning that are catching my attention, like you mentioned the chakras and auras and things like this. Human design, does it use information from other beliefs or systems to inform what it is?
Yes, it's actually a synthesis of ancient wisdom with modern science, which I like to think modern science is finally catching up and logically validating some of the ancient wisdoms. So the chakra system, the Kabbalah, the tree of life, astrology, synthesized with this little subatomic particle called a neutrino, our genetic quantum physics. Quantum physics and the tree of life have a lot of similarities. Oh, and the I Ching, right? The 64 hexagrams of the I Ching correlate incredibly to our 64 genetic codons. A lot of things. So it's, we all of the ancient wisdoms, right, are looking at the same thing kind of through a different lens. And human design synthesizes, creates something new out of all of those lenses, and also takes into account some of the more modern scientific discoveries and gives you this, if you will, genetic blueprint of how you are designed to differentiate, to be different, which is never supposed to be embraced by everyone. It's what we call elite knowledge, and that doesn't mean it's better or you're better if you believe it, but it's not for the masses, because you really have to kind of buck the system of everybody should do this and no one should do that. You have to use your own guidance to navigate through, which one of those things are actually right for you or not. Like my example of chemotherapy and many vaccinations, I get to, and some I get right, which makes no logical sense to my mind. It goes crazy, but that's how I choose what to do and what not to do.
It sounds like you're also using your intuition as well while you're working with this.
Yes, you have things that are defined, fixed, consistent, reliable, and then you have things that are fluid, right? Wherever you're not fixed, there is this fluidity and adaptability, which is similar to intuition, where you take in information from others, right? But it's not consistent. So you use that to become wise, to build your experience. I think the founder of Human Design, who said that the definition, who you are is the student, and everything that's open is how you go to school, or your hero's journey. What are you designed to meet in life, experience in many different ways, and learn from?
Do you want to talk about how did you end up at the school where you are now, like the creative director? Like, is there a story behind that?
Yes. So Linda, her profile is a 4-1. It's a fixed fate. And she's very much about working with people she knows or people who they know. So referrals, that's her comfort zone. And I was very lucky to meet a woman who lived in my area who was one of Ra's original students and went through those classes with Linda. And I got to know Kathy Kinnaird was her name. She has since passed really well. And they were looking for someone to redo the website, to create new artwork, a new look and feel. And Kathy knew that that was my previous life that I was trying to transition out of, and introduced me to Linda. And that's how I started doing design work for both the IHDS and the BG5 Business Institute. So I was introduced, and then another person who I had met and taken some classes from also was close with Linda, and she said, yeah, Ruth is great. That's how that happened. And then over time, my work, my relationships with people in the school, and Lynette, who's the office administrator, grew to a point where they became very familiar with my work. One of my passions is understanding cycles. And so I was fascinated by the movement through a year, right, where the sun moves through the hexagrams, kind of in the same way there are 12 houses of the zodiac, but hexagrams and the lines of the hexagrams are very narrow, thin, specific parts. I became fascinated with how that creates this cycle of evolution, of mutation, of growth over and over. So I started writing about those, and I have a newsletter, and I would send it out, and somehow the school got wind of that and asked me if they could share them on the newsletter. And that happened. And then when an opening started to come up for more instructors, I think during COVID, a lot of people were looking for answers. And so enrollment in the school kind of skyrocketed. And I was invited and asked if I wanted to teach. So I studied and got certified to teach the different subjects. And that's how I became a teacher. It was a perfect evolution of doing what I love, people seeing it, asking me, and it feeling really right for me. And now I pretty much full-time teach for this school, and I love it. Yeah, I love getting to meet people from all over the world and introducing them to all of the possibilities that understanding your design can bring.
Are there specific classes that you like to teach? Like, do you have certain topics that you feel like, oh, I'm really well versed in this area, and I like to talk about this particular subject?
I think I say that every class is my favorite because I like them all for different reasons. I teach the foundation courses. The school has a trimester system. So new classes start in January, May, and September. So 3 trimesters a year. And I love introducing people. So the first class you can take, it's called Living Your Design, the Living Your Design workshop. And then if you want to go further, there's Rave ABCs. And then the 3rd trimester of your first year is Rave Cartography, which sets you up if you want to go on to become a certified analyst. And I love introducing new people. I love the questions and the insights and the ahas, right? And the conversations we have when you're first getting curious, right? I love that. Right now I teach 7 trimesters, of analyst training. And I teach the last 2 semesters or trimesters of that. And very often it gets so exciting. They've been through the beginning of analyst training, and I get them for incarnation crosses, which is, if I'd have to pick anything, my very favorite subject, because your incarnation cross is your path to purpose, and it's your contribution to the whole. That's what that is. If you live aligned with who you are, there's a very specific contribution you're here to make to the collective. And I just love that. And very often I have students that I taught in the foundation classes, and this is several years later, and they're back at the end of their analyst training. And that's just a bonus to see how much they've grown and learned. And I love that. And then the last trimester, the last class of analyst training is a mentorship to prepare the final assignment for the certification board to be certified to be an analyst. And I enjoy that too. So everything else is kind of about the individual, right? And then there are connections, relationship readings, and we'll all have cycles of life that have a certain theme and certain gifts and lessons that come in to support the ultimate flowering of consciousness, the Chiron return. I love getting people that I had way back at the beginning and meeting up with them again and seeing how far they've come and what their perspective is. Even though we teach it a certain way, each person is supposed to take that, apply it to their life, and decide for themselves what works and what doesn't. Right? So it's a very individual journey when it's done correctly, I think. You know, it's not a dogma, belief system, a rule book, anything like that's not what it's for.
It's so fascinating, and like it must feel like kind of a reward in a way that people are coming back, and also their point of view and how they perceive everything. I was wondering if you have a story you would like to share from one of your students where you have been like, oh my God, like this is amazing.
Wow. Oof, so many. And I'm not sure I can grab the details right now. Many students who come are in a transition point in their life. Could be a divorce, or the children leave the nest. And now what? And to watch people go from the confusion, right, the difficulty at a transition point, and find a new purpose and strength and a love for themselves, right? Rather, I find so very often the things we beat ourselves up about in our minds are actually our greatest gifts. And that aha moment is priceless, right? I have many of those, right? In my journey, it's like, oh man, I beat myself up. I think we all have these stories, right? And they're pretty much the same. Why do I always do that? Why do I say yes when it's a no? Understanding why you do that can literally change your life and how you view yourself. It did for me, and I see that all of the time with people through their journey, where they become confident, they love and appreciate who they are. They've learned to use their gifts and forget about things they were trying to do that weren't really right for them, but somebody else thought that they should do this or that. Those are the things that make me smile, because that was my journey, right? This, what is wrong with me? How did I end up here? Makes perfect sense how I ended up here, and I don't have to stay here.
Do you find that there's any particular quality that would make for a good human design student? Or can anyone come and learn this?
If you're curious, if you have an open mind, if you think your life could be different or better, then, human design is worth exploring. The first course, which is an introduction, and the first basic tools, you get enough to do what we call start your experiment. Many people, that's all they need. And many people are driven to go further. But the first course, Living Your Design Workshop, is good for everyone. It just gives you things to contemplate. It's really all about coming to terms with how your mind works, why your mind works like that, and that you don't have to believe that. That is programmed. Like, I'm really short. I always wanted to be tall because tall was better according to my culture, my society, than being short. You need to be thinner, right? Unhappy with myself because I was never a thin person. Why do we beat ourselves up with that? Well, it became really clear. I started to become aware of why my mind worked like that, and it's natural and it's normal, and we can't change it or fix it, but we can come to terms with it, make friends with it, and observe how making decisions based on who you are rather than what everybody else thinks you should be can turn your life around and give you a life that is far more graceful. It doesn't mean that stuff isn't going to happen, right? Life is not meant to be rainbows and unicorns. There is no growth, right? There is no growth possible without some sort of friction, conflict, crisis, adversity. That's what the Kabbalists call the correction. When you're ready to grow, a boulder can land in your path and you have to go another way. And that gives you an opportunity to grow, to progress, to change, to evolve. So many people just want everything to be good all the time. Well, that's not the purpose. It has helped me a lot to understand that crises, based on my design, is my push factor, that I grow each time I have to face some adversity, and it's always going to be there. And so I meet it with curiosity, right? I might not like it, but I don't resist it. I just say, okay, this is what this is. What do we do now?
We had a guest tell us, it's reminding me of what you're talking about right now, of turning your pain into gold.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. And it's just, you can reframe these things, right, from an internal place to navigate life far more gracefully. We have happy and sad. Well, that's the human experience, this range of feeling. And if we were only up here, right, you don't get the full richness of a life. The contrast is really important.
Is there anything about human design do you think is misunderstood by people? Or is there anything that people don't have a harder time understanding?
Well, over the course of the time that I've been studying, experimenting, teaching human design, it has exploded on social media. Of course, exploded because that's what I talk about and what I do. So I get to see it all. I see a lot of misinterpretations of the original knowledge. Now, that inherently isn't bad, but it can be very misleading. It is really hard to have sound bites and hook people in to get interested when you don't understand at its core what it is for. It's not a quick fix. You can't get a reading or come to a class or read a post and get it. You have to embody it. You have to live it and not necessarily believe what you're reading on social media. Ra would start many of his early lectures with, listen, don't believe anything I say. And I love that. And I say that sometimes too, because it's true. Listen, hold it like a cloud and observe it, experiment within your life and see what it means to you. It is not one size fits all, and it's an embodiment and a living of it that allows you to grow and change and align more to, your natural gifts and talent. So don't believe everything you say or you hear or read or even what I say.
If somebody is misunderstanding human design at its core, is it possible for someone to cause harm to themselves or others and inadvertently cause harm?
I'm not certain that poor decisions, this is the world according to Ruth, because even a bad decision or turning right instead of left is going to give you an opportunity to learn things, to see things, to do things. Causing harm, I think if someone tells you what to do and you believe it because they're well known or they're an influencer, right, that can be harmful. That I would be careful of that. Don't just follow the influencer and what they say for you to do. Really deeply look inside, right? In human design, we call it your personal or inner authority. Everybody has one. There are many different ways depending upon what's defined and what's open. And you have to learn how to use and navigate yours. And sometimes it's not that easy. So you're going to make mistakes. Even today, I think the exact same way as I did my entire life. But I don't believe it. For example, a girlfriend, right, might ask me, would I like to go to the movies Friday night? And I get this. It's like all the air drains out of me. That's my no. I'm going to immediately think, yeah, but if I don't go, she's going to think I'm not a good friend and she needs a friend. And then she's going to get upset with me. And that is so uncomfortable. So I should just say yes. That is it. My mind does that every time. Because that's how my mind is designed to work. Yeah, there's a whole story behind why that's so. And I notice that, I observe that, and I go, aha, yes, it's a no. And I would say, Kathy, thank you so much for asking me, but not this time. Ask me again, please. I have very targeted, specific energy. I'm very open. And so there's a lot of stories that go on in my head, right, that make me want to be a people pleaser. And that is not healthy for me. You recognize any of those things?
Yeah. I do. So I feel like there's a lot of people also that is afraid of putting up the boundary, saying no, because it feels like you're either hurting the other person or they judge you or may think different about you. And I also am like, but I should people please because then people are happy and then I've done my job. But it's not that. You have to make yourself happy and love yourself enough to actually take care, and then you can go and take care of the rest.
Yeah, that's exactly true. If you go up 10,000 feet and look down, if it's not correct for you, it's not going to be beneficial for anyone else, truly, in the long run. And I could see how my marriage, that we took that path. I started doing everything I could because my husband at the time, he was what we call emotional and moody, and correctly so. That moodiness was a huge part of his creativity, and he was so creative. I kept trying to fix that. I thought it was because of me. So I would say yes when it was a no. I would not do things that I knew were going to trigger him. I stuffed everything. I walked on eggshells. I turned into a bad version of him, had lost so much of me. And it happened so slowly over the course of our relationship. And in my mind, I think that's why I got cancer, because I stuffed everything and I held on to it. It was so stressful. I was always walking the edge, trying not to piss him off, you know. And what happened was that wasn't good for him. Me not being me, changing into a bad version of him. His name was Steve. I called myself the Ruth Steve, you know, like The Fly, that movie where the fly and the man get integrated when they're I just wasn't me anymore. I had lost what made me me to try to make him happy, because I thought he was unhappy because of me, and not true. So we went down a really bad path that ended up destroying our marriage. And the minute it was, 6 months later that I was diagnosed with cancer after we split, the stress on my system from holding on to all of those things, those emotions, and not letting them out, not letting them flow through me, broke some of my systems down. I think that if it's not right for you, it's not right for anyone else. And it sounds selfish, but it is not to take care of yourself first. Because only when you are well and healthy and full can you really give to others what they need and give them an authentic experience of who you are. And I thought when I started saying no, I was going to lose all of my friends. And actually what they said to me, oh, thank God you're finally being honest. We hated to see you go along and knew you really didn't want to. So yeah, it had the opposite effect. Stronger, deeper relationships when I started being honest.
Wow, that's amazing. Why do you think it's so hard for us as people, just, and maybe not everybody, I'm generalizing, but why do you think it's so hard for some of us to be able to say no? To be able to be so focused on people pleasing or not be more genuine? Because that's what it sounds like. Being something I'm not feeling or not being true to myself.
I know it. And that is so painful for me to see. Without going into a huge lesson, there's in our evolutionary path, the time when the chakras came in, well over 2,000 years ago, we were a different form. We had shorter lifespans. Things were different. And that part of our evolutionary process required, and there's some new evidence has come that we were Homo sapiens like 200,000 years ago. A little further back, we thought it was like 90,000, 100,000 years ago, when we turned into what we call Homo sapiens, or seven-centered beings. The job of all of those thousands of years was to build up the mind, to name things, because when we were Cro-Magnon Neanderthals, we grunted. We weren't able to speak, but the next evolution brought a larynx that dropped, and we were able to form complex sounds, right? And our mind was being built up. We could label things, right? We created this illusion and all these names of things. And that was required to build the infrastructure and civilization. In order for that to happen, right, we had to get everybody on the same page, right? And this is not a judgment. Religion came in. Fear-based leadership allowed masses of people to do what they were told so that we could build the infrastructure. And according to Ra's revelation in 1782, another mutation of humanity started to happen. And we're called Homo sapiens intransitus. According to Ra's revelation, we went from seven-centered to nine-centered beings, right? We're a transitory form right now, transitioning from that old to a new form that has potential to be born after 2027. There's this whole thing about the closing of the cycle of planning right now. So we have a foot in the seven-centered, fear-based world and a foot in the new world, which is far more cooperative and not hierarchical in the same way. So our minds work exactly the same way they did, which means we're driven by fear that we won't survive. We won't be supported. Fear of not fitting in, of not being accepted, of not getting what you need to survive. Which, we're not going to be eaten by tigers and things as a rule right now. We don't have to fear for our survival in the same way, but our minds still hang on to that. So we're fearful if we don't follow the leader, if we don't do what is expected, that we're going to be rejected. We won't be loved. We won't be part of the family or the community. We'll be ostracized. And that fear keeps us doing what we think everybody else expects us to. When in fact, the opposite is really true. That's at least what's true for me. And my lived experience was, if I just be me and say yes or no based on yes or no for me, that actually things are much easier and much better. I did not lose a single friend that was truly a friend. We're coming to the end of what we call the cross of planning, a global era that lasts just under 420 years, which was based on skills and focusing on developing skills, government and community support. Everything came in, right? Religions, communities, Social Security, Medicare, communities took care of communities. And if you look, that's all going away, and we're moving into an era of individualism. Our next growth cycle is we can't depend on them to take care of us anymore. And we can see that happening. It's called the era of the sleeping phoenix. So things literally have to burn down, be torn down to be rebuilt in a new way. And that's the fear so many of us are dealing with right now when we look around what's going on around the world.
That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I just got a little class. I'm just curious. It's a personal curiosity of what you think about this. Like, do you believe in reincarnation? Are we going to get, or do you think it's a one and done deal? Or are we going to get a chance to come back into that new world you were talking about?
Okay, great question. We have two crystals of consciousness. We have the personality crystal. Those are imprints when we're born. And then there's the body, the form, the imprints that happen while we're still a fetus. Two very separate things. Our form's limitation is it has one life and then it expires. That crystal goes back to the earth. But the personality crystal is eternal. It's been here since the beginning of time and it will be here to the end of time. It incarnates over and over and over again as long as you've died correctly, whole other subject. But it comes in and gets different gifts, strengths, and talents each time, but it stays with the same base. There's at the very bottom, there's one of 5 bases, and then there's one of 6 tones, and then one of 6 colors, and then one of 6 lines of one of 64 hexagrams. So everything other than the base is new each time. The body, inheritance from our ancestors. And so in the water, the liquid, it has a little bit of information from our ancestors, but the personality, our soul, if you will, incarnates over and over again. And that has been a belief for thousands and thousands of years that there are 2 souls. The Phoenicians had 2 burial grounds, one for the body and one for the soul. It's a fascinating thing. So I believe, yes, although we may not be fully conscious, those things persist. And then when we move back up to the bundle, the crystal bundle in the heavens, that information can be shared with our bundle. And there's trajectories, so we are kind of destined to incarnate with other people or souls that we've incarnated with before. Fascinating stuff.
It is. Oh my God, I've learned so much new today. I love it. And I love it how you describe with the crystal. I can imagine it in my head. Do you have any advice or recommendation for anybody that is a newbie or beginner?
Yeah, the answers are inside of you. Don't look for your answers outside of you. Those aren't your answers. Your answers are your answers. What works for one person, doesn't necessarily work for you. And so whatever you believe in, whatever your spiritual journey, the answers aren't outside of you. They're inside of you. And find a way to look inside of yourself. It's natural for our minds to compare, to judge, to criticize. Never going to go away, truly. That's just the way the mind is set to work right now. Go deeper. Put your feet in the dirt or the grass and take some deep breaths. And my friend Amy says, be where your feet are, right? Live in the now, in the perfection of this moment. Of course, we think about the future and the past, but life is lived in the now. This moment is perfection. Don't get caught up so much in worrying about what happened or what is going to happen. Don't let that fear ruin the beauty of today.
For people that want to learn more about human design, what do you recommend?
Well, I recommend you go to, well, of course, I would recommend starting at the source knowledge. Many people have studied with Ra and or read a book and are now a human design expert. But if you start with the source, you have a solid foundation. So the IHDschool.com is the official educational arm. There is a newcomer section with a lot of free resources. Start there. Jovian Archive, which you can find a link on the IHDS site, is the foundation or home of Ra's legacy, his family. There's a lot of stuff there. If you're just starting out, know where the information is coming from when you hit upon the influencers that have all these kitschy, bright, shiny things. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's complex enough without reading all different sources and trying to stand on firm ground. It can get very confusing, right? So once you have a foundation from, say, the source, then you can start exploring other things and see if something else resonates with you more or less. It is your life, of course.
How can should people contact you if they have questions, or would you rather they contact the school, or how do people get in touch or connected with services?
Feel free to send me an email and I'll do my best to get back to you. You can send questions to the school, and that email address is in the footer of each of the pages. Order a free short report and look at that. And there are lots of free resources on the school website. In fact, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I think Linda Bonnell and Lynette Crisfield and I did webinars for newcomers. And they're on the resources page under webinars. It's free. They're about an hour each. They're 5. So you can hear us talk about, right, the foundations, the basic of human design that gives you a good starting point. Those are also on my website. I have them on my resources page. So either place, they're available.
Thank you so much for sharing your own story and journey and so much wisdom about human design. And it's wonderful. Thank you for your time and being on here.
So nice to meet you both. Thank you for inviting me. I love to talk about human design. It has profoundly changed my life, and I am forever grateful for that.
Thank you for listening to Vision Chat. You can find more about us at visionofprofoundhealing.com, where we offer readings, courses, and classes.